think we are live. Welcome, everyone. Yay, we made it. Thank you so much for joining us for the February 2021 Friday Facebook Live on the Ask a Bookkeeper show. Our mission on Ask a Bookkeeper is to take the big, intimidating ideas that often scare small business owners away from following their dreams, and we simplify them and turn them into just another fun part of running a small business. So you can think of us kind of like Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, or Bill Nye the Science Guy for small business. Our show is largely crowdfunded, which is why we're not advertising or thanking any sponsors today. So if this information is helpful to you and you want to see our show succeed and grow, please visit askabookkeeper.com and click the button to donate. From there, you can also find our YouTube channel and our Facebook group and participate in discussions and past episodes that can help your business succeed. And pretty please also subscribe to us on YouTube and be sure to tell your friends how awesome this is. I am your host, Ingrid Edstrom, the Priestess of Profits, and I'm here with my co-host today, Penny the Practical Professional.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be here.
And we are very excited to introduce our special guest, Matthew Fulton of Parkway Business Solutions, returning with us for his second round as a guest on the Ask a Bookkeeper show. And we are so happy you can join us today. Today, we will be discussing resilience. How can you pivot when things aren't going quite as planned in your business? So before we dive into that, Matthew, welcome back. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work you do at Parkway Business Solutions?
Found Waldo.
Matthew, also known as Waldo, yeah.
After just returning from a trip where going around the world a bit as Waldo, I figured I'd be in character, but here we go. The serious side of it, though, Parkway Business Solutions.
Serious? No, put the glasses back on.
You like them? Is this my good side?
It's good. It's good. Continue.
Well, at Parkway Business Solutions, what we do is provide bookkeeping and payroll services for small to medium-sized businesses. But our real specialty is workflow design.
No.
Nice.
Is that really what Waldo sounds like?
Yes. Yeah,
You know, I've only ever seen him in books. I didn't know he had a voice.
Well, I studied under him for about 3 months to make sure on my voyage I really captured his essence around the world.
Oh, that's key. So. It's really key.
Well done. So you're a method actor.
I'm a goofball. That's what I am. We find the ways to make life enjoyable. If we're going to work for a living, we might as well enjoy what we're doing at the same time.
Absolutely right. If you don't enjoy it, what's the point?
Yeah.
Well, you are in good company with your goofballness.
Thank you.
I'll play your straight man.
So with that, we're going to talk about resilience today. And this is a very impromptu topic. And I'm going to kind of share what this topic is coming from a little bit. A handful of weeks ago, I got the opportunity to go see the Mr. Rogers movie, It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, with Tom Hanks portraying Mr. Rogers. And one of the things that they showed in this fantastic film was an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood where Mr. Rogers is trying to set up a tent. He wasn't able to do it. And the crew on the backside of the Mr. Rogers show were saying, oh, well, we can do another take. We can, set it up and make it so that it's easier for you to do it on your own. And he said, actually, no, I think that the audience needs to see that adults fail too. The kids need to see that adults struggle with things and that we don't make everything look perfect every time. So today's episode of Ask a Bookkeeper, we were actually supposed to have a different guest as of like an hour ago. And that guest had a family health emergency and was not able to make it. And Matthew graciously stepped in at the last moment to join us again, which we're so, so happy and grateful for, to make it so that the first Friday Facebook Live can happen. And we thought that this would be a perfect opportunity to pull back the curtain and show some of what's going on behind the scenes at Ask a Bookkeeper, talk about resilience in our own businesses, and also resilience with the Ask a Bookkeeper show and some of the things that we are discussing shifting here on the show so that we can provide the content to you that we really want to bring together. Yeah. With that, I guess today we had a big pivot. And I got to admit right now, 45 minutes ago, I was crying on the phone with my husband. I was, oh my gosh, if we don't find somebody, we're not going to be able to pull this thing together this morning. We put tons of time and energy into trying to find great guests for this show. And this is not the first time that someone's had to cancel at the last minute, despite the fact that we line them up sometimes months in advance. And that can be really, really stressful. And as we said in the introduction, this show is something that we do to give back to the community. This is not a money-making endeavor for us. We're not getting a bunch of sponsors. This is soul work that we do to help people really be able to have the businesses that you want to have. I believe that if more people were making good money, doing what they love to do, that we'd be surrounded by happier, healthier people. And that is the world that I want to live in. Helping you succeed in following your dreams makes our world a better place. And what's more, when our global economy is made up of a larger portion of healthy small businesses, that is something that our legislators need to listen to. So that is why we put all this effort into creating Ask a Bookkeeper, even when sometimes it doesn't feel like the time investment is necessarily sustainable. And we're trying to figure some of those things out and do some of the pivoting. And Matthew was one of the first people I reached out to this morning with the help, because Matthew is part of what we like to call in the back end of the Ask a Bookkeeper show, Penny's Advisory Committee. We have actually a handful of people that we're working together with to get more brains in the room and think about how we can make this show better. And we actually just started really focusing on this advisory committee more seriously in about the last month. We had our first real meeting just a few weeks ago, and only a few of us could attend. But it's very much a grassroots effort to try to pull this thing together. So I guess with that, I would love for us to talk about some stories of resilience. I know, Matthew, you had one. And then also talk about some of the things that we're looking to shift and change in Ask a Bookkeeper to make the Ask a Bookkeeper show more resilient, so that we're able to provide the content that you really want to see on this show. So before we get into that, Matthew, you had a great story about resilience. I would love for you to share that.
You know, before I share some of the flubs that we've had ourselves trying to develop a community, I wanted to actually commend you on living by what you're preaching, right? Having a Facebook group requires a lot of time, energy, and commitment. And when it's done for the right reason, which is not for personal gain, it can be difficult to just keep pushing along and pushing along and pushing along. Mm-hmm. It's important. I've always felt it's really important in social media that when we're provided a platform to use our voice, we need to also use that voice to show others that things do not always go as planned. It's very easy for a lot of people to always talk about how perfect the practice is, how perfect this is, and how easy things are. And I'm going to tell you one very simple fact. They're full of it.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of time and energy.
Yeah.
And when you I'm sure you'd agree, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, right? I mean,
yeah. Absolutely.
Our goal by doing these things, and for myself, our group, QB Community Live, I remember that point where the group itself started to take its own life on, and people started to answer questions for other people, and started to just have this organic, it was an organic community. That was one of the things I was the most proud of. It had nothing to do with me, right? Like Linda and I together, we may have put the group on Facebook, but everybody else is who built it. So I know that a big part of the, today is kind of talking about how do we grow these groups? How do we find the best way to have the most impact for everybody out there to make sure that we are using our time wisely?
Yeah.
Right.
So
ideally, yeah, there shouldn't be one person who's always doing all of the work, pushing it. There should be one person who's like, once the ball is rolling, every now and then gives it a little nudge. Again and again and again. And that's a lot better for everybody, because then everybody gets the benefits of it.
I think technology plays a part in some of this as well. And we do have to acknowledge that. I mean, it can be scary to try to figure out how to go live and do these things. And we're not talking about just this one show. We're talking about everything as an entire group. But I guess the best way to say is this is a great opportunity to invite those who are interested to learn how to do these things, who wish to be engaged and want to just do a little bit more, reach out. I know that all of us are willing to share the knowledge, of course.
Well, and that was one of the intentions behind creating the Ask a Bookkeeper show, is that it is a lot of work to do things like this alone. And the creative spark suffocates in isolation, and so part of the reason we created the Ask a Bookkeeper show was as a platform, not just for me and Penny to be able to talk about the crazy things we want to talk about, but to have guests like you and our other wonderful guests on the show, and even to be able at some point to step back and have other members of our community host the show. I am not tied to being the only host on the Ask a Bookkeeper show. We can create whatever we want with this. The main thing is that the Ask a Bookkeeper show, like I said in the introduction, is like Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, Bill Nye the Science Guy for business owners. And we started calling it Ask a Bookkeeper because back when I started the show almost 10 years ago, I was doing bookkeeping. And I had this idea that business owners could talk to their bookkeepers about more than just their management accounting. Now the show has grown into so much more than that. And we've been talking about how it needs a new name. And that's one of the big things that we've been talking about in Penny's advisory committee, is brainstorming how can we more effectively and accurately portray the message that we're trying to get out there with the Ask a Bookkeeper show, and how do we find a name for the show that really encompasses what it is that we're trying to get across. And just as a little sneak peek that is almost fan service for the couple of fantastic people that we have watching right now, because we do have a couple people lurking on the background in Zoom here. We might have some people on Facebook watching as well. And just checking in with that, you get to hear a little bit of what we're talking about. Some names that we are discussing, putting out there, are things like the Green Street Gang, which encompasses ideas of, Sesame Street and some of those other things, and more of that neighborhood aspect, while also being very grassroots and being having that money background, because this is about having effective, profitable businesses. We want to keep the business side of it and keep it on business topics, but also recognizing that business topics are life topics. And as we're talking about resilience today, some of the big life topics that we're touching on are things like vulnerability, empathy, asking your community for help, being able to pivot and not being too attached to the ideas, and also something that you touched on, Matthew, when you were talking about your experience with your Facebook group, was this idea that so many of these groups think that they have to show everything's perfect all the time. We're working to do the opposite with the Ask a Bookkeeper show, and showing where things aren't perfect all the time, and talking about those hard pieces, because comparison is the thief of joy. And what most people show on social media is only the good stuff, where everything's perfect all the time. And we end up comparing ourselves against this perfect social media picture that isn't real. And that is one of the big places where imposter syndrome comes up. And imposter syndrome is one of the biggest things keeping us from stepping out there and taking risks in our businesses. One of the things I remember from my very first QuickBooks Connect conference, when I saw the fantastic Sekou Andrews speak, who is also a guest on a past show. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel and look at his episodes. He was talking about how failure is pre-success. But if every time we fail, we're not willing to get back up again, it's not pre-success. We have to figure out how to get back up again. That is what resilience is, and we don't have to do it alone. That is a big part of what the Ask a Bookkeeper show is for. And if any of our friends that are joining us in the back of Zoom, because I see a few more people have joined, let me know if you want to join the video chat. We'd love to have your voice in the room. So yeah. What else have you noticed in your experiences, Matthew?
So I think back on talking about resilience, right? I've been very, 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 very fortunate to have Linda as a partner in crime with Cubic Community Live. And I remember back to just a more recent time we were trying to do a live stream. And man, every once in a while I have these technology days. That's literally what we deem it. It's called a technology day. And when I have one of these days, it means if I touch any type of technology, it is not my friend at all. So it usually is well, I'm going home early. I'm not going to work anymore today because if I do, I'm going to blow up a computer or something. So
Is Mercury in retrograde?
Yeah. So we were trying to do this live stream. Linda's internet would not work. I'm trying to do these things to get things connected. We're having problems there. We finally having a plan A, B, C, and make up plan D is always the way I've always tried to approach things. And while it was tough to watch at the beginning, we got through it. We did the live stream. She got on her phone like a champ. She was calling in through it that way because you know what? That's better than not. And
Yep.
the thing is, her audio was so much better than mine. I'm like, why am I doing this whole other thing, right? But the show must go on, as they say. And
Yeah.
just let the first stumbling block that hit us stop us. We kept pushing through, and we put some content out there. Now, whether people watched it or not, it didn't matter. But what we did learn was a lesson together of how we could get through it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think that that's a really big message along the lines of resilience, is that perfection and done don't usually happen in the same space.
That's hard with I've always said you should have an accountant with a little bit of OCD, but a little too much OCD. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, well, even on Ask a Bookkeeper, right after we did the Kickstarter campaign and during that whole time, we were shooting a bunch of really high-grade professional videos. And unfortunately, we had a bunch of videographers and other crew who kind of dropped the ball and it didn't end up working out. And so that was another situation where we had to, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, figure something else out, and move on. And part of it was because we were going for that really high quality, professional looking video. And then after we realized all that, we were like, that was a lot more work than it was worth. We love the videos. They turned out great. And we're so grateful to have them. But really this first Friday Facebook Live that we do every month works so much easier, almost as good, not quite as high production value, but we get so much more content out, and that's really the key.
Well, and it makes it so that we can have impromptu guests and things like that. I think the main thing with the production quality videos is it's really, really fun to do the silly, fun little shorts that have more story behind them and character development. But the real show is more about the guests, and being able to do that live and impromptu so that we don't have to go through all the editing and that sort of thing, that ends up, pretty much just as well. So I would love to do more things like introducing Procrastinator Gator. That is my favorite video that we have done. And it was also a lot of work, a lot of crazy, crazy fun.
Special effects, woo!
What was that?
Special effects, woo!
Yes, special effects. We have special effects in our video, which is great. But yeah, that Kickstarter, speaking of resilience, oh my gosh. So within the last few days before that Kickstarter ended, I was on social media pushing so much, trying to meet our goal, that sitting for so long, I literally slipped a rib. I got a rib out of place to the point where like it hurt to breathe. And so if you think about a Kickstarter campaign, kind of like running a marathon.
Yeah.
And then finishing the marathon with a twisted ankle, that's what this was. That Kickstarter was crazy, and I'm so glad to have had the experience, and I'm glad that we were able to push through it with the Ask a Bookkeeper show. But the crazy thing is that through that experience, you know, here we were so busy focusing on the Kickstarter and trying to create this professional quality thing that the community had no idea what was going on behind the scenes and how much work it was. It was crazy. And like I said, it was a good experience. I'm glad to have learned from it. I am never doing a Kickstarter again. I would help a friend with their Kickstarter, like launch an album or something like that, but never again am I doing a Kickstarter. And at some point, if anybody wants to talk about Kickstarter in a whole episode of Ask a Bookkeeper, I'm happy to get deeper into that experience. But the resilience piece is the main thing here, that I think that we can have more effective resilience if we're able to talk more about our experiences. And Alicia Katz says that she's willing to join us on video for a little bit. Alicia, I'm going to click on Alicia's name in our attendees list and promote to panelists. There we go. So Alicia's going to join us.
What were you saying there, Matthew?
One of the things that started to resonate with me a couple years back is this very simple statement. It's really easy to forget what you had to learn. It's really easy to forget what you had to learn.
Right.
Yeah.
And it helps me find patience when I'm trying to share knowledge with others if they're not capturing the knowledge as quickly as I would like. I just have to remind myself it's really easy to forget what you had to learn sometimes in life.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Welcome, Alicia. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everybody.
Alicia is also a past guest on the Ask a Bookkeeper show. Do you have Polly with you today?
No.
Alicia has a puppet too. Woohoo! So, Alicia, you probably have caught our topic here of resilience. Do you have a story about resilience in your business?
Well, just reflecting on something that you just said about learning and being and it being constant. One of the things that I consider myself when I'm working with my clients is almost like a counselor. That when I'm, I focus on training, and specifically QuickBooks Online training. And so I wind up working with the same client over time. And sometimes they're a quick learner and they just got it, and we always cover new turf. And then sometimes we are covering the same turf over and over and over again. And they start feeling bad about it. And, that's where I say, this is where you just have to pick yourself up and keep going. That what is the best use of your time? That sometimes resilience is powering forward and standing up and being able to achieve this goal that you have. And sometimes resilience is stepping back and pivoting and finding a new path to walk down.
Absolutely right.
It says you got to know when to hold them and you got to know when to fold them.
Ooh,
Yeah,
you should write a song.
Too.
Yay. Alicia, I love your green screen and the fact that I know that you have green on your shirt and your heart, because it looks like there are chairs inside of you.
Isn't that funny? One of my favorite things about wearing my QuickBooks t-shirt is that it, you can see through me.
That is so cool. Special effects on the Ask a Bookkeeper show.
And here I actually thought that you were setting up for a seminar or something like that. That's pretty funny.
I'm coming to you today from my classroom.
Woo!
Sometimes I'm in my office, sometimes in somebody's home, and today I'm in my classroom.
Yay! So we have just a handful of minutes left before we wrap up at the top of the hour. I guess with these last few minutes, I would love to just check in once again as far as some of the things for the Ask a Bookkeeper show. And Alicia, not to put you on the spot or anything like that, one of the things, because you joined us a little bit late, that we were talking about is how some of the things with the show are shifting, and that Matthew and some others are part of what we like to call Penny's Advisory Committee. We've got a group of people on the back end of the show that are putting our heads together and figuring out how to improve this offering and turning it into more of a community endeavor so that many hands can make light work, and that it's not all on me and Penny and Gator to try to figure this out, which on the back side of things, hey, pulling back the curtain a little bit more, Penny and Gator are actually the same person.
You say that out loud. People aren't supposed to know that.
Gator's actually on the other side of the curtain behind me.
Right.
That's how
So there are a few people who are pushing really, really hard to make this show happen. And we're trying to make it so that it's more of a community effort, and that we can have more hosts on the show and not be stuck to doing just the First Friday Facebook Live. We might have other time slots, more impromptu things of, hey, this is happening now, completely unplanned, but here we are. And, just improving the offering, and also making it so the offering is not necessarily accounting centric, and really trying to particularly group together the people who have that, like Matthew said, goofball creative spark. And I love how you've had puppets on our videos in the past, and you dressed up like a Yeti for scaling new heights, and you've got all these great things. Would you like to be part of Penny's advisory committee?
Well, it's kind of funny that you ask. Remember a bunch of years ago at QBC when they gave us the My Intent bracelets that all said together?
I do remember that.
Yeah, this past year, I got myself one of those kits. And so for Christmas and Hanukkah, what I did is every event I went to, I took it with me and I made bracelets for people.
Oh.
And my word for 2020 is partnership. And
Aww.
where I'm going as a growth and development strategy is I don't want to do it all myself. Just like what you were saying, I offer all of these classes, but it's only me and my small little world that I can promote to my own existing clients, but I don't have reach. And so what I wanted to do for 2020 is make as many strategic partnerships as possible so that I can get all of this information in my head out to people.
Yeah.
And not just rely on the time that I have and the reach that I have, be able to collaborate as often as possible. So you have an absolute yes, I would love to participate.
Woohoo! And for any of you watching, if you're seeing this show and you're like, I want to play a bigger part in Ask a Bookkeeper, I would love to help and play with puppets and do crazy things like that. If this sounds like fun to you, please reach out to me. Penny's Advisory Committee is not an exclusive thing. We're just looking for more people who want to participate on an active level. And please let us know if you'd like to play with us. We would love to have you. And I think that's kind of the big message, Alicia, that you just touched on, is that the biggest piece of resilience is that we do not have to do this alone. None of us.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're feeling really down and out in your business and having a tough time, and you're saying, gosh, I'm not sure I want to do this anymore, this is just exhausting, and I'm not sure if it's worth it, it doesn't feel sustainable, ask for help. Post it in the Ask a Bookkeeper community. That is exactly what that community is there for. And say, I am struggling with this. Can anybody help me? We have a group of almost 2,000 members right now. That is the entire intention behind this group. So please ask for help. You don't have to do this alone. And together we can make a rising tide that raises all ships and make the world a better place, built on a foundation of thriving small businesses. So with that, any closing thoughts from any of you now that we're reaching the top of the hour?
I love that I have a community of like-minded accounting goofballs.
Yay!
I want to take a quick moment to draw a point to, there are so many different groups and platforms of social media that there's no reason we need to be different. We need to be siloed off from each other. It's been a major message of mine always. I am anti-silo. I want as much as possible. The more we collaborate and the more we work together, who cares whose group this, that, whatsoever, it doesn't matter. The fundamental simple truth is together we all succeed.
Yeah.
We just try to work together and help each other out. We will all gain from it. We will all benefit.
Absolutely right.
Fantastic. Excellent way to close it out.
All right. So let's go forth and succeed together. Failures to success, resilience. Here we go.
I found Waldo.
I found
Waldo.
I'm off to my next journey.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Right,
you.
I'll see you in the next class.
And Matthew, have a
Thank
great
you, Matthew. Thank you, Alicia.
Bye.
I guess.